Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. Our guests today are two extraordinary authors. Margaret Atwood, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Graham Gibson, welcome to Santa Fe.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're here on a book tour, and you both have new books that we'll talk about, but let's talk a little bit about your background. Graham, you were a novelist for many years. You wrote Five Legs, Communion, Perpetual Motion. You took a little hiatus in there, and have come powering back with these beautiful nonfiction books. The last one was called The Bedside Book of Birds, and I want our viewers to know this is exquisite. It's sumptuous to read and to look at. And this year's book is The Bedside Book of Beasts, and the illustrations and the stories are just marvelous. Thank you for giving these to us.
Well, thank you.
And Margaret, you almost need no introduction, but the book that brings you to Santa Fe on your tour is called The Year of the Flood. But you've been writing for 50 years. You have everything. You have poetry. You have criticism. You have fiction. What a gift. I think you're most well known for The Handmaid's Tale, but 2 years ago you wrote Moral Disorder. You got the Booker Prize for The Blind Assassin. Fabulous read. And I think you've probably gotten more prizes, the Prince of Asturias Prize, the Governor's Award, the Arthur C. Clarke Award. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Okay, that's over with. You're here on a book tour, and you've been blogging on the book tour. So what fun you've been having. At one place, they did a banquet of foods from the Year of the Flood. You've had processions. You've had acting out of parts of it. You've had contests about the covers. It's so much fun. How are you doing? Are we the last stop?
No, you're not the last stop.
Okay.
But you are almost, I think, the last U.S. stop. So you're not, however, Graham's last U.S. stop. So, yes, we keep going until the first week of December, pretty much. And what fun have I been having? Well, I'll tell you. I've been having a lot of fun. It's very true, because we have been doing these musical and dramatic events in which the only constant figure is me. I go from one place to another, and they take the basic script and the music and put on the event, and I don't know what they're going to do before I get there. So we have done the last U.S. one of those. We did it in Chicago, and it has been quite an amazing experience. And to go with it, I did build a website, and I've got a tour blog on it and a Twitter feed.
It has made me so happy to see all the fun that you're having, even that banquet of food.
Several banquets.
Yeah.
Yes, several themed food events have taken place. And people get a choice. They can have the food that people eat before Toby joins the Gardeners, the food that she eats while being a member of the Gardeners, and the food that she eats after leaving, which maybe you don't want to go there, but the food while she's there is very healthy.
Well, you have peopled these books with kind of futuristic, they call it that these are dystopic novels as opposed to utopia.
Utopic, yes.
And that there's always this stuff about, is it speculative fiction, is it science fiction? I love what you say. You love pop science, which is science where you don't have to do the math. All of these creatures that you've come up with
are possible. In fact, we're working on some of them right now, and some already exist. We already have the glowing green rabbits. We have the goat and spider splice, which gives you spider silk in the goat milk. You can make very good bulletproof vests out of it. And they're working on the pig that will grow kidneys just for you. And by extension, they might well do the mohairs, which I think would be quite commercially viable, which would grow human hair on a sheep, DNA coded for you in case you wanted to change your hair color or possibly even have some hair. So I offer you this idea.
Well, this is what is so lovely about the two of you together, because you have offered us the best of future possible worlds and
Well,
animals.
actually, the word no,
Present.
I'm not sure that it's the best.
The best. No, some of them weren't. Some of them are not so good. Yeah. And then you have taken our world now and given us stories and ancient, wonderful illustrations about, particularly in the Book of Beasts, the Bedside Book of Beasts, about predators. Well, what do we have to learn from predators?
Well, there's a lot to be learned from predators. I think at the heart of the book is our relationship with the natural world. What has happened to our sense of being animals? I mean, because for millennia, we were hunter-gatherers moving on the land. We were moving in nature, surrounded by natural light rather than artificial light. And we were living at relative peace with all the other creatures, because hunting animals do not kill for fun. They don't kill gratuitously. They do it simply to eat or to clothe themselves, in our case as humans. Somewhere along the way, we went somewhere else. And it's our brain, this astonishing thing, this astonishing creature inside our head, which is more concerned with the theory and reason and logic than with the logic of our body. I mean, to paraphrase Pascal, that the body has its reasons that reason doesn't know. You know, that our body knows perfectly what to do, how to breathe, how to absorb food, how the heart keeps beating. It even knows how to look after itself in most cases. And that's totally independent of the brain. That's our animal presence. And we are not paying enough attention to it. But the real approach with the beasts and the prey is that at the heart of animal evolution is the fact that we have to eat and are frequently in danger of being eaten. Now, always humans have eaten at least 2/3 or more of green stuff. But meat is very important. But meat traditionally was sacred, because in order to eat meat, you have to cause a heart to stop beating, you know, and you have to take a life. Now, given the nature of things, there's nothing wrong with that, because we were made to do that. If you choose not to, that's fine. I have no question either way. But when you do, however, cause a heart to stop beating, you should probably thank something. You should probably say, just a basic thank you. All early native traditions in North America and throughout the world, that they knew, or they knew, I was going to say they believed, but they knew that animals have some form of soul, that there is something in them that is as sacred in their life as is in ours.
And in the Native American tradition here in America, they would give, for example, if a hunter had killed a deer, they would put sweetgrass in the mouth of that deer as a gift.
Absolutely.
And to thank him for giving his life.
And in the Arctic, when an Inuit kills a seal, that he, because it's usually the man who does it, will put water into the seal's mouth. You know,
Yeah.
and so that there is, when you really live with the animals that you eat, you treat them differently. And we don't do that anymore. I mean, and when as primitive peoples we adopted anthropomorphic gods who either were in their image or they're in our image, that's, you can make the decision there. We then started to thank the gods. It took it away from the animal.
The broker.
That's right. Absolutely. And now the vast majority of us don't thank anything for our food.
Well, as your God's gardeners do, they're so aware of the circle of life and giving thanks that each little thing, even the worm that makes the soil rich, everything has a place in the circle of life. And we have truly come far from that. But to leave your beast for a minute and go to the birds, the spiritual essence, and birds are such a spiritual metaphor for us.
Well, and that's why, I mean, the first book was the bird book. And I became a bird watcher fairly late in life. I was in my mid-30s.
Didn't you say it gave you a reason for poking around outside?
Well,
You
that's
said you were
true.
bird
That's true.
watching.
That's true. And smoking used to do that too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I became a bird watcher in my mid-30s, and I then discovered how many people were interested in birds, and what a role birds played in all kinds of religious ceremonies. And so I decided I'd put together a book that explored as best I could, all the ways that we've related to birds.
And
And it's
so
in the area of
beautifully.
imagination, it's of creativity, of longing, of religion, and a sense of being free of gravity, the sense that perhaps something will survive the death of the body. And that's it's so that the bird book addressed all that, and people seem to like it. The book has done well. When I'd finished it, I thought, okay, these are all the things that are outside the body, that are outside of gravity. What about the body? And the obvious one there was the predators and the prey, that relationship of hunting and being hunted. And so that the beast book is the book of gravity, and the bird book is the book of flight, and gravity is mortality.
Well, you have so much in common. Your intellectual curiosity, your sense of spirit, your environmental awareness, and your dedication to these causes. Now, your father was an entomologist?
He was.
And so you got to be out in the Canadian wilds in this cabin summer after summer. How wonderful.
Well, it was more than the summers.
Oh, it was the winter,
Yeah,
the Canadian winter.
everything but the winter. So spring, summer, and fall, basically 8 months to 9 months of the year. We were there. We weren't there in the winter because insects don't do anything.
Oh, you're right.
In
yeah,
the
the
winter.
frozen, yeah.
They're hibernating. But the rest of the time we were up in the woods, and my dad was a very good woodsman and very knowledgeable, so that was just what was surrounding us all the time.
But you obviously learned through him your keen sense of observation.
Possibly, or maybe it was because I was nearsighted.
Ah. Well, whatever it is, you bring it to your work with such wonderful details, delightful. And you also were an outdoorsman in your youth, canoeing, rifles.
We were lucky because we were living in a Canada. We're of an age where the outdoors was taken into consideration in school. That many Canadians went to summer camp, and that there were major campaigns to take even the poorest kids out of the cities and to get them into nature. The Star Children's Fund. I mean, it was newspaper, and so that we were a generation where nature, although we were very very urban. I'm a very urban man, but I've spent a lot of time in nature, starting when I was about 6 or 7. And that at that time and for quite a while afterwards, we played outside. You know,
Yeah.
there were no
That's-
electric
a lot
games.
of that is gone.
There was no TV,
Yeah.
and now and that means that indeed we were introduced to and we partook of an astonishing thing, which is life on Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
It was not theoretical. It wasn't the mind. It wasn't, we were very fortunate with that.
Well, this is one of the reasons I'm so happy to have you today, because I hope that you can evoke in our audience the sense of what's to be done. In The Year of the Flood, Toby says at one point, she says, well, we knew there was wrong going on. By the way, there's nothing preachy about your books at all, but you bring us inexorably to this knowledge. She said, well, it was wrong. We knew things were going wrong in the world, but it was wrong somewhere else. And then it got closer and closer, and if anyone dared mention it, it was so obvious and so unthinkable we couldn't stand it. And then she comes to the truth that we have wasted the earth, that it is gone. And then you take that premise, which we are all on the brink of, and you unfurl it into this possible future. And so if we are at that brink, on that cliff, tell us what we can do.
Well, first of all, right now, it's only a book. You have the choice. You can keep it inside that book. This isn't the future that you have to have. I believe that Mr. Gore has just come out with a book called Our Choice. So we still do have a choice. Don't know whether you've ever done any whitewater canoeing.
Yes,
Well,
not well.
before you enter the rapids, you have a choice of going there or not going there. But once you're in them, you actually don't have a choice. you're not going to be able to turn around and paddle the stream again. So you have to run the course as best you can. We're just at that point. So shortly we will not have a choice. We still do have a choice right now, and many, many people are working extremely hard to keep us in that position, to keep us in the position of still having a choice. It's the work that we do with BirdLife International, which has vowed to save every endangered bird species. We still have the choice to save them. They're not gone yet. Wild Earth Guardians here, they're involved in similar process, keeping us in the position where we still have a choice. Because once it's gone, it's gone. So there's that hopeful thing. It's still a book. We still have a choice.
And I've heard you say, how can we complain about open strip mines when we're at our computer, in our hothouse, you know?
Yeah,
Where is the responsibility?
well, the responsibility is ours. I mean, as a species, we want to we want to blame something if things are going wrong, and we look for a convenient thing to blame, and there are lots of them in the current environmental crisis. We can say it's the tar sands in Alberta. We can say it's Hummers. We can say it's coal-fired. We can say it's cars. But the truth of the matter is it's us. That without us, none of that would be going on. We didn't have to do all of that. And as Margaret says, there are ways indeed of adjusting and readjusting. I mean, I really think that one of the best things that could happen, apart from getting our children out into nature and our grandchildren out into nature, would be for all of us to say, should I be doing this?
Whatever it may be.
Whatever
at the
it may
moment.
be. Should
Yeah.
I be doing this?
This, at this moment.
And one of the...
And none of us would do very well at that, you know.
No. But the rubber does hit the road with coffee. I
Well,
loved your happy
yes.
cup of... But tell us about what's the relationship between the coffee we drink in the morning and the birds of the world?
Well, that's a very simple relationship, and if you want to read about it, there is a book by Bridget Stutchbury, who has become in the future a saint of the gardeners,
Yes.
Saint Bridget Stutchbury, who has written a book that is like Silent Spring, but it's called The Silence of the Songbirds. So that's like Silent Spring plus the silence of the lambs. And she is a bird biologist, she's a scientist, and she has studied this very closely, and she says the things that are killing off the migratory songbird populations, the ones that come spend their winters in Central and South America and then fly up through all of our countries and normally breed in the boreal forest, what's really killing them off is sun-grown, pesticide-sprayed coffee, because habitat is cut down, where they live is cut down, and then toxins are sprayed all over, and that kills their food and them. So we have seen this drop in those populations, really very sudden drop. And sun-grown, pesticide-sprayed coffee, which wasn't around 40 years ago, all coffee used to be grown in the shade. Any Arabica coffee is grown in the shade. So if we were all to switch to organic shade-grown coffee, that would be it.
You'd save
You know,
an
you
enormous
would
amount of
save
habitat.
a huge amount of
And
habitat.
that's something we all can do.
We can all do
it's
that.
voting with your purse.
That's
Voting
right.
with your coffee cup.
Yeah.
And I have followed that. It has been hard at times. You do hit deserts where there isn't any.
Yeah.
But you can find it. And for instance, Pascal's Cafe right here, they've got it. And all you need to do is go online, look around, look at your location, and put in Organic Coffee Cafe, and you can find out who's got it. And you can put organic coffee and find what sort of beans you can get to have in your own home.
One of the things that absolutely astonished me in some of the literature surrounding this is apparently coffee is the second most traded what's the word? Substance
on the
after oil,
planet.
Well,
It's a huge,
It's a
huge
thing.
and that forests are being devastated, so we can have cheaper coffee.
right.
So
So,
if
that
it's
we can
organic-
do more of the wrong things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
organic shade grown, I have to add in fair trade, because that means you're
Oh, yeah.
working with individual farmers who are paying attention
Yes.
rather than with some sort of machine operation.
And
And
Bridget,
you're paying them a
Sorry.
living wage.
Bridget points out that in fact the forests where coffee is being grown, one, because it's full of insects, then the coffee grows faster and it's
pollinated.
pollinated better, but also that it's somehow even richer for a great many songbirds than the utterly closed-in forest. So the mixture of coffee growing in the traditional forest is apparently a richer place for a wide variety of birds. So it's not just not as bad as the Robustos coffee,
It's
but
actively
it's better.
good.
It's
Yeah.
actively good, and it's such. And anybody over the age of about 40 is going to recognize the explosion in coffee shops throughout
yeah.
North America and Europe that has happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was in Toronto, there were no coffee shops. You had coffee where you went into a restaurant. Nothing ever called itself a coffee place.
Now, you were recently invited to be a wisdom keeper.
Yes.
And
By Dr. Joe McGinnis, who's doing this television series called Wisdom Keepers. And Dr. Joe is a pioneer of undersea exploration. So taking submarines down, for instance, he's been in the Arctic a lot. He was the first person to go down in submarines there. And he has started this series in which he goes to people of a certain age.
well, Jacques
says-
Cousteau, well, Robert
Yeah.
Kennedy Jr.,
Yeah.
Jane Goodall, Dr.
Yeah.
Goodall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who has a new book out, which is quite a wonderful book.
We've interviewed her many times. We
Yeah.
will interview her for that.
Yeah.
But be a wisdom giver.
Well, I felt quite stupid when I was a wisdom giver because, of course, you don't really feel you have any wisdom. So I actually can't remember what I said.
Well, you said you talked about the Inuit
Yes.
and how to tell
Elders
who
were
the elders
valued.
are is the
That's
person
right.
that they take their tea to.
Yes,
And you also mentioned that wisdom is to be kept to be given when needed.
that's right. You shove it on people, except during this program. But but you asked.
I did ask. If you were giving out some wisdom, Graham, what would you tell us?
Well, I've already said one of them. Should I be doing this? I mean, I think we have to increasingly accept personal responsibility. I think that wisdom is such a loaded word. Although I know more than I did 30 years ago, or perhaps even 20 years ago, but I'm not sure it's wisdom that I've learned. I think that basically what we have to do is to take very, very seriously the impact that our behavior is having, not only on nature, but on ourselves. That there is a wonderful, somewhat pessimistic Anglican philosopher in Canada by the name of George Grant, wrote a book called Technology and Empire. And he said at one point that we could not do to the earth what we're doing until we had first done it to ourselves. I mean, if we had not done to ourselves what we have done over the last whatever period of time, we wouldn't be doing this to the earth. We couldn't have done it. We couldn't treat chickens the way we do in battery farms, or we couldn't jam trainloads full of cattle and drive them, or bees all around in trucks. We had to do it to ourselves first. So I think that one of the things that, if there is any wisdom, that we've got to figure out in ourselves that part of us that is free somewhere of that, and to try and act on that one. And it has to do with reverence.
And gratitude, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
To give back to the life
Absolutely.
forms that
That's
nourish
right.
us. Well, so are you optimists or pessimists?
Yes.
Yes.
Both.
Anyone who writes a book is an optimist.
Uh-huh.
Because what you're saying is, I believe that communication is possible. I believe, number one, that I can finish this book. Number two, that it will get published. Number three, that someone will read it. And number four, that they'll get something out of it. And that's quite a big optimistic package right there.
Well, I can promise you that is exactly what happens. And you, sir, optimist, pessimist?
I'm a mixture. I'm slightly more pessimistic than Margaret, or at least than Margaret admits to be. But I mean, these are simply. I mean, I'm sure at the collapse of the Habsburg Empire or of the Roman Empire, there are all kinds of optimists and pessimists around. It isn't so much, I mean, that's simply an emotional response to something, or a psychic response to something. That what one tries to focus on is, what are the odds? It's more like gambling, right? What are the odds that this is going to happen as opposed to that's going to happen? And if the odds aren't good, that doesn't necessarily make you a pessimist.
Well, I am an optimist. My life is so enriched by what you have given us in your books that I maintain optimistic. And as you say, we should hold these up. For example, in your newest book, The Year of the Flood, it is just a book. It does represent a path to be taken or not taken, just a possible future. But thank you for describing it to us in such detail. And Graham, these beautiful books, your latest, The Book of Beasts, and I cannot tell people what an experience it is to even leaf through, let alone read these books. They're so beautifully done. And this earlier one, anyone with bird watchers for friends, this is the book. It's called The Bedside Book of Birds. And our guests today are Graham Gibson. Thank you for joining us.
Well, many thanks to you.
And Margaret Atwood.
And
what a
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you very much. And I'm Lorene Mills. I'd like to thank you, our audience, for being with us today on Report from Santa Fe. We'll see you next week.
Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.